Hey y'all, welcome to days 4 and 5 with my wild Mustang Odyssey. I decided to combine these 2 days into the same video because they cover the same topic, which is teaching Odyssey to pick up his feet. I started by introducing some grooming tools. I wanted to start currying him because he's shedding his winter coat, and I thought it would help him be more comfortable if I got some of that hair off. Videos really don't show exactly how fluffy Odyssey is. He has a really thick winter coat that would help him in the Nevada winter, but he's in Florida and it's going to be 80 degrees soon. The quicker I can get that hair off him, the better. It also helps make touch a positive thing for him, as he started to really enjoy being curried. All that hair on him must have been really itchy, so he appreciated me taking it off. I kept working on him with approach and retreat. I could honestly curry this horse for hours and he would never run out of hair. I started to begin and end my sessions with some grooming time after this day. I think it's really important to spend quiet, quality time with your Mustangs. I try and avoid entering their space, working on a bunch of difficult things, and then leaving straight away. I try and ease into the session with something nice and relaxing for him, and end it on a good note as well. I want my Mustangs to like me and not just tolerate me, and that takes time, but I want him to start becoming domestic as quickly as possible. I don't ever want to focus on just the riding things and not make him a domestic horse. Here I'm trying to figure out where on his face he likes to be pet. He kind of does burrow ears when I pet him on the forehead like here. Burrows tend to put their ears back like that, and that's exactly what he reminds me of. I can't tell if he's just doing that because he thinks he's supposed to or he has to, or because he genuinely doesn't like being touched there. I practice some leading in between desensitizing exercises. If he gets stuck, I just hold tight until he softens. I started to work on what I'd begun the previous day, which is switching hands and being able to touch him with the opposite hand on the same side. And then I began working on touching him with both hands at the same time. This is very important for being able to pick up his hooves. Once again, I want to specify in between doing things with him, I'm offering releases, relaxing, standing out of his space, and giving him some time to process. I just can't show every minute that I'm in his pen or my videos would be way too long. At the same time, I'm teaching him to get comfortable with 2 hands on him at once by switching from my left to my right hand. I'm also teaching him to be okay with my hand coming at him and not starting just at his face. He needs to be comfortable with me reaching out to touch his shoulder, neck, or barrel without me starting at his head. After he had a bit of a break, I went to work on some more rope desensitizing. I was mostly refreshing him on what he'd learned yesterday, but I was working up to being able to put the rope around his foot and start teaching him to lead by the foot. The way I teach Mustangs to pick up their feet is by first desensitizing with the rope around their leg. At first I don't put any pressure on and I just get them used to the feeling of something touching their leg. And then I start to put pressure on and teach them to give to pressure around their pastern. This is called leading by the foot, and it is a very valuable exercise in teaching horses to give to pressure of all kinds. It helps horses work through situations where they may feel stuck. For example, if they ever were to get trapped in a fence or caught in something that they can't escape from, it teaches them to relax and wait for help. This also helps me see how they're going to act with pressure on their legs before I put myself in a vulnerable position trying to pick up the leg with my hand. I find that this is a very easy and safe way to teach horses to pick up their feet. I find that not only is it safer for me, it's lower stress for the horses as well. If you think about it, you're asking a flight animal to be okay with you handling their legs, and basically you're taking away their control over their own legs. This is asking a lot of them, and it's especially scarier for them if you were to just go straight down with your hand and try and pick up their leg. For most horses, that's pretty scary, and they may spook and potentially injure you. So I teach Odyssey what he's expected to do in advance before my hand ever touches his leg. I've simply found this is the method that works really well with horses, and they seem to appreciate it as well. They all turn out perfect for having their hoofs handled and trimmed by the farrier. So here I'm just putting some light pressure on him to get him to lead forward by the foot. This teaches him to respond to pressure around his pastern and not to panic. And then I start to desensitize him with the rope all over his leg. At first they can be confused, but I find that if the horse has a good understanding of pressure, it's not too hard for them to figure out what they're meant to do. Since he picked up on that so perfectly, I started to work on being able to pick up his hoof the same way I would hold it up if I were going to clean it out or trim it. This is harder for them to learn, and so I take bigger releases and I let him know he did a good job. Even though he backed up, he still held his hoof in the correct position. This was absolutely perfect and exactly what I wanted from him, so I decided to move on to the next hoof after that. I was running out of daylight, so I wouldn't be able to get much done. There's an art to getting the perfect rope swing around the leg to nail it in the correct position, and I am very out of practice, so it took quite a few tries. I generally recommend using a stick and string or something similar to pick up the end of the rope and not your foot or bending down. So do as I say, not as I do. I actually picked up the rope wall off camera. He had wiggled around a bit, but I did get it on that left front, and I started teaching him to give to pressure, and he did that really well too. So it's the same concept on both sides. Desensitize, I accidentally smacked him in the face with the rope there, and I felt really bad about that. He's pretty sensitive on the sides of his face, which definitely means he needs to get his teeth done. And I'm not super surprised considering he's 7 years old and never has had them done, so he probably has some pain in his mouth. So I'd like to get him seen by the dentist as quickly as I reasonably can. I've just found this is a really good way to get them picking up their feet safely without any risk of injury to the handler or for the horse becoming dangerous to have their hooves trimmed or anything of the sort. There are some Mustangs that are very, very protective of their feet, especially their hind feet, and so I've had to come back to them after a few months of doing other kind of gelding training, kind of come back to the feet, but Odyssey is not one of those. He was really good with his feet. I was about out of time. I didn't have much time on day 4, so I came back on day 5, and I started off with some more currying because, again, he is ridiculously fluffy. Like, it really just doesn't show up on the videos as well as you can see in real life or putting your hands on him. But I introduced him to the brush the same way I did the curry and just spent some quality time grooming him. At this point, I'm working on myself, not creeping around him anymore. I tend to creep for a little too long with the new Mustangs, so I want to work on consciously relaxing my body language around him, talking and moving and making noise and being a little more unpredictable than he's used to. Here I demonstrate how I teach them to be comfortable with 2 hands on them at the same time by increasing the speed at which I switch my hands and then eventually just putting both hands on them. I shared a sweet moment with him as he started to really enjoy scratches. And then I was back to work on his hooves, the same process as yesterday. I definitely wouldn't recommend putting your foot this close to their hoof, even if you are wearing steel-toed tennis shoes, as I was. I've gentled enough Mustangs that this process definitely isn't as scary for me as it used to be, especially with Mustangs like Odyssey that are pretty sensible, and I generally don't think are going to kick me in the head. This part is going to be a little more edited down because it's just a repeat of what we did the previous day. Once I get to picking up the hoof with my hand and especially working on the hind legs, I'll show you guys a bit more. Odyssey is alwaay game for a scratches break. Just look at how soft that expression is.
That's a really good sign.
So then I start to alternate touching his leg with my hand and picking it up with the rope so that he understands it's the same idea. That scared him a little, so it was perhaps too soon with that, but I was okay with his response. He did really well. Every now and then when the rope falls off their leg, and I've already spent 15 minutes getting the rope on their leg in the first place, I'm like, alright, whatever, guess I'm picking it up with my hand. I'm honestly okay if he moves backwards a little bit the first day. I find that usually goes away by like the second or third session working on his feet. But looking back, I probably would have picked up his hoof one more time where he didn't move before ending with that hoof. However, he was really soft, and so I did decide that it was a good time to move on to the next hoof. Usually if I can get them comfortable with the hand on their leg and understanding that means to pick up their hoof, they've pretty much got it down the next time I work on it. This especially works on horses like Odyssey that learn really well while I'm away. To get the rope around his left front, I actually had him step into a little loop on the ground and just pick the rope up. Every now and then I very gently remind him with my elbow that he's not supposed to bite me in the back while I'm doing this. Just looking for him to briefly pick up his hoof and be soft to the rope. I don't mind him wiggling a little bit because he's unsure. I just want him to be soft to the rope. I was really happy with how he accepted my hand on his leg here. I don't mind if they take a minute to pick up their foot. I think it's a good sign that they're not too sensitive to my hand on their leg and think that it automatically means pick their leg up. I don't aim to get every hoof 100% on day one. I just want to get them to a decent point where they understand what that pressure means and they're generally pretty comfortable with my hand on their leg. My only real goal with horses like Odyssey is to get them past the point where I feel the need to put the rope on their leg. If I have to go back to that in later sessions, that's okay. But I've found that if I can just get them to that point, when I go to work on their feet the next day, they're 10 times better than where I left them. I'll show this in future videos with Odyssey, where I keep working on his hooves. Unfortunately, I didn't realize until I already had the rope on this leg that my phone had stopped filming, but I can show what it looked like with the other hind leg. Just put the rope on there and wiggle it around. The thing about the rope is it's not going to move off them if they kick. So with a stick or something, it might move away and then it might actually smack them if I'm not careful. Great experience. So I like the rope because it stays on them. You can wiggle it around and I like doing that. Even if you don't want to teach them to get to pressure with the rope, to give to pressure with the rope. Stuck in a fence or some kind of a line, they yield their legs to that pressure. Now when he starts to get a little panicky and starts to get kicky, I just hold on tight. This is just him being scared and unsure what to do because I'm taking away his legs. And then once he gives me the right answer, I release and let him know he did a good job. With an older gelding like Odyssey, I knew there would be a little bit of this in there. This mainly seems to me like a bit of frustration and like he just doesn't really enjoy what's happening, which is completely understandable. Unfortunately, I can't explain to him that he needs to be able to have his hoofs trimmed to live a healthy life. I was pretty confident that this little kicky behavior would go away pretty quickly. He's a smart horse, and once he understood that wasn't helping him and that wasn't the answer, he didn't try it again. So this is the same concept as the front legs, just start to put my hand further and further down the leg and alternate putting my hand on the leg and picking it up with the rope. I don't want him to think that my hand automatically means pick up his leg. I want him to only think that pressure on his leg means for him to pick up his leg.
I don't think this is the He's pretty smart.
This was absolutely perfect and exactly what I'm going for in these first sessions with picking up their hooves. I don't aim to hold them up for a super long time, just quick get in and get out and teach them that it's not a scary experience.
So unfortunately, well, I think I lost a lot of the footage of
Like I said, I do have footage of getting the rope on this left hind. It's the same idea as the forelegs. So at this point, there's no pressure on the rope. I'm just letting him figure out that feeling of the rope around his pastern. He can wiggle as much as he likes at this point. We actually ended up spinning a few little circles before he decided he was okay, and then let me get to work on desensitizing. And I just followed the same steps as the other.
food. Okay.
So here I'm still not putting any pressure on the rope. As you can see, I have the rope right over the tendon. I only put pressure when it's around the fetlock or the pastern. And so I'm just trying to desensitize here, and if he picks his leg up and gets a little kicky, I stay soft. I don't pressure him. I just let him figure out that it's no reason to kick. Another good reason to get your horse used to ropes around their legs is in the event they may get tangled up in your reins or lunge line or something similar. If your horse ever finds themselves in a bind like that, they'll know not to panic because they're comfortable with that feeling already. So I started to work my way down this hind leg the same way I did with the other one. So here I'm just waiting for him to feel like he's comfortable with my hand on his leg because he was kind of jerking his leg up to get away from it. And so I didn't want him to think that was what he was meant to do. I wanted him to relax and feel comfortable and wait for me to actually put pressure on his leg in order to pick it up. So here, this felt really soft and nice, and so I released, and the moment I released, he started to wiggle, which I didn't quite anticipate, but he did really well, and so I decided to end our session there.
Oh, there they go.
I came back a little later just to give him some scratches and hang out for a bit. Like I said, I want to start and end our days with something that's nice for Odyssey. This is the first time Odyssey started to show that he was enjoying scratches, which is always a big moment for a Mustang because it shows that they're breaking their walls down. Alrighty, y'all. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was a pivotal day for Odyssey's training journey, and I'm really excited to share with you the stuff we got up to on the next few days.